Hi, are you a gifted or twice exceptional adult who feels a bit stuck in your journey? Do you have goals and dreams which you would love to achieve, but you don't know where to start or feel a little bit overwhelmed? Or maybe you have 1,000 ideas, 500 projects, and get distracted by your own thoughts and would love some support on focus and accountability? Whatever gets you stuck, I wholeheartedly believe that gifted and twice exceptional specific coaching will help you unleash your power so that you can be your most authentic gifted self. I recently embarked on my journey on becoming a gifted and twice exceptional coach. So if you are interested in working with me one-on-one, please reach out via email at hello@giftedunleashed.com, or you can find more information about my coaching offers on the website giftedunleashed.com/coaching. I would love working with you and I would love to get you unstuck. So please reach out and let's get started. Hello and welcome to Gifted Unleashed, where we talk about the gifted and twice exceptional brain and how it affects our thinking and experience of the world differently. There are a lot of stereotypes and stigma around the term giftedness, and I'm here to challenge those. I'm here to raise awareness and to have a conversation around the topic of what it means to be a gifted and twice exceptional adult. Common experience among gifted folks is that they feel out of place. They don't quite fit in. They're too sensitive, too intense, too emotional, too overexcitable, and too deep thinkers of the world and about themselves. So if you have been called too much about anything, this show is for you. I'm Nadia. I'm too loud, too colorful, too bubbly, too bossy, and I love to talk too much. So welcome to my world. I'm so happy you're here. Hi, everyone. It's been a long time, but I'm so happy you are here. And we have another amazing episode for you. Today, we have Alícia Couto on the show. And Alícia is joining us from Brazil. She is a twice exceptional adult. She has ADHD and she's gifted. And she's going to tell us all about her journey, how she found out, how she learned the vocabulary, how she went about this, and how it changed her life and what she's doing today. So I don't want to spill too much beforehand. So without further ado, here's Alícia. Alícia, I'm so excited you're joining me on my podcast today.
Yes, thank you for your invitation, Nadia. As I said to you, I'm a really fan of your podcast, so I'm pretty excited to be part of that.
Oh, thank you so much, Alícia. And just for the listeners to know, so we met on Instagram. I reached out to you when I saw you're following my profile, and then you were sharing with me a little bit in the DMs your story. And I said, oh, that sounds so amazing. Would you like to share your gifted story on the podcast? So you're living in Brazil. And so, yeah, we're having an interview across the globe.
Yes.
So
I'm from Brazil, as you say. So I hope that I share a little bit of my experience from Latin America, right? But just a comment that I want to mention: Brazil is a big country, right? So I will share here my personal experience, but of course we have some professionals who knows more. We have some in Brazil, but I think it is interesting, right, to share a little bit about my journey here.
Yes, exactly. So would you like to start with sharing a little bit your journey? You can start, once you discovered your giftedness, or you can also start prior and what led to your giftedness.
Yeah.
It's up to you how you would like to share your story.
First, I will start with the story about how I discovered the ADHD, right? Because I think it's an interesting story, because I think says something about how women are underdiagnosed, Actually, it was because of my sister. So my sister is already married, and my brother-in-law, he was diagnosed when he was a kid. So he knows since he was a child that he has ADHD. Not that he received the proper support or accommodations, of course, but at least he knew about it, right? So my sister, because she wants understand better him, improve the relationship. So she starts researching. So she entered in a hyper-focus mode. Of course, we didn't have that language that time. So she read a lot about it. And then she realized that actually she had ADHD too. So a lot of makes sense because she had like some struggle when she was a child, like with school and stuff, and a lot of things made sense for her. And then she got her diagnosis with ADHD. And then she came to me and said, Alicia, I think you are too. I think you have ADHD too. And it took some time to accept because I didn't feel like I was, But she came to me because I have a sensory issue. Like I always was very sensitive with light, noise, and everybody who knows me knows that, right? And she said that people with ADHD has this thing too. And I already thought in the past that maybe I was autistic, for example, but I never went to discover. Of course, for example, when I discovered about introversion helped me to understand a little bit, but I don't think explain everything, right? Because I think maybe it was too much, the sensitivity. But I had a hard time to accept because the point is, and I think this is interesting to talk about, because in my case, I didn't have problems with school when I was a child, right? Until my 18 years old, I didn't have any problems. I was actually really good. I have really great scores, right? So for me, it didn't make sense because I don't know how it is in other countries, but for example, here in Brazil, they say that you need to present the symptoms before you are 12 years old. And I think this is an important point to mention because for
yes.
gifted, mostly sometimes it's not the case, for example, right? Or even other ADHDers don't have this experience and they think I am not because I need to show, right? But it's not just because of grades, right? And score. There's much more to talk. So I had this resistance. But actually, I start having problems with school, let's say, when I enter college. I have a lot of problems in college. I took much more years to graduate, for example. But I didn't think maybe was because of this. I always thought was maybe my fault, I was not working hard enough. It's not this. It was me, like I never thought that time too that maybe I had something. I always thought it was me. So she kept talking about it always. She come and bring this topic again and again. And I remember I saw a TED talk from, I forgot her name, but is a girl who has a YouTube channel called How to ADHD that talks about ADHD. And her story was really like mine because she starts struggle in college and starts struggle with the relationships through the social part of everything. So I went and accept and I got my diagnosis. I went to the psychiatrist and got my diagnosis. And when I started the treatment, I started treatment mainly with the medication, but I didn't have that time a therapist because, of course, I was frustrated with therapists.
And how old were you at the time when you got your ADHD diagnosis?
Was in the beginning of 2022. I was 30 years old. So I was 30 years old there. Actually, 31. Sorry, 31. So it's pretty recent, actually. It's been 2 years that I have the diagnosis. And so I start the treatment and my life changed tremendously. My work worked better. That time I already was self-employed and I was working really hard on my business to make things happen and just putting effort and not having much results as like equal the effort. I was having results, but I was putting a lot of effort. And I was not with much social life or friends because my energy was all to work because work, is most important, right? And after the treatment, when I started the treatment, things got better. I got more energy because I always had a problem with energy. I was having already a situation with energy and chronic pain too. And something like starts having like some answers, like the ADHD can be an answer for this. And so my energy improved and my life starts changing. but something was not quite answered. Some things was not answered, because sometimes I look at people with ADHD, for example, my family, right? My brother-in-law and my sister, or even people on the internet, and I didn't feel represented by them, because it seemed that something was off. Something, because I saw that I struggle with things that they don't, and they struggle with things that I don't, like this. So something was, and I still want some answers. And mostly what I want some answers was about my social life interactions, what was happening, my difficulty to connect with people. Because, for example, when I was in college, I worked pretty hard in my social skills, Like, I learned a lot. I study psychology. I even study personality types, for example, to understand people. And what happened was that, of course, I became good at this, but what I had was just one-sided relationships, right? Because I was there understanding people, and not necessarily people was back to me. And I think this happens a lot, right? You try to fix yourself, but you still feel unfulfilled with the connections you have. And so I still was living this. And I thought, when I received the ADHD diagnosis, I would correct this, because I thought it was something about the sensory problem. That's why I could not interact much. But I started analyzing myself and reflect about what really happened in each situation. For example, the interaction that was not good for me and the ones that was not, what happened there, right? And I noticed that the most of the time, it seems that I was not interested in some conversation, or I was not engaged or not paying attention. But this made me actually feel bad about myself, when I was there feeling disengaged, because I thought, me that is impatient, like something like that. And so I kept thinking. I remember sharing with my psychiatrist about it, and he brought that thing about the autistic possibility, but we didn't search much. But then I found a short video of a psychologist from Brazil. He calls Jean Alessandro. He was in a podcast, and in the short, he explained, was like a cut, right? A cut from a big podcast. He explained the difference between gifted, ADHD, and anxious person. So this video was shared in a Facebook group, ADHD Facebook group. And when I saw that video, a lot of makes sense, because he explained the branch thinking, for example, and he talked about some struggles, right, people face. And he mentioned the book of Paula Prober, that is The Reinforced Mind, right? So I went straight to the book, and I've read, really fast, right? And actually, I always say that what struck me with reading that book is how my challenges were all described there, and how, like, she knows so much about me. Because a lot of things, when she was explaining, made a lot of sense. For example, the sensitivities, right? The ethics, how you care about the word problems. And sometimes you feel even naive, right? Because you care too much. So a lot of things made a lot of sense. So it was really great to find her book. And just a comment about this part of my search, right? Is because I'm actually talking from a place that I'm little privileged to know English, because in Brazil, I don't know if all the listeners know, but we speak Portuguese. But like, I even check the statistics. Actually, just 5% of population know English, and just 1% is fluent. It's like a really small percentage of the population that knows. So I'm coming from a place where I think that know English was a really big privilege when I was searching for knowledge. Because, for example, sometimes I want to share with someone the thing, I think you're gifted. But I have this problem of not being able to share good content, like profound content, because the person sometimes doesn't know English. For example, I talked with 3 people about it, and one of these friends, she knows, so she went deep and read the book and listen to the podcast. And there's another, she knows English, but she doesn't read English, like, you're gonna make me read an English book. I don't know if I can handle, like... And there was one that I think was more sad for me because she doesn't know English. So I could not share anything with her because it's a lot of the journey of self-discovery is you with your reflection, right? You listen the stories, you read, and you reflect about it. Must be something that the person do with themselves, right? So I read her book, right? And I went to search because I have this habit of listen podcasts. So I went to search her on the podcast platform to see if she was interviewed somewhere. And this was when I found your podcast. So it was really a great moment. And since then, the podcast was a great part of my journey. And this is that I want to say, like, that I'm really grateful for your work, for other podcasters. Because of your podcast, for example, I found the other podcasts that I really enjoy listening. For example, the from Jennifer Harvan Saling, that is Conversations about Gifted Trauma, and Chris Wells from Positive Disintegration. I think is the top 3 that I most listen, and of course I already see them, you there, they here, and etc. But your podcast made me know other people that was discussing about and talking about it, and this was I think very important. And mostly because I think it was something about my self-discovery, because I was there. Because when you listen to a podcast, you're like a third person or the fourth person in the conversation. You are a little in the conversation, let's say, the experience. So it was really great for me to listen to or more gifted women talking. I think this was the most important part for me. I think this was very healing for me, even because I was being validated, I was being understood, right, a lot, and people sharing what I live is a really was a really important experience for me. And they say that, right, that like listen podcast is a way to co-regulate in a way, like, right, because you're there sharing your experiences. And so I continue reading and listening, and I went to talk about my suspicion, right, with the professionals that was helping me that time. I talked first with my psychiatrist, and I think this was a good experience because my psychiatrist is not normal, right? Psychiatrists listen us, but mine, he listens. I even will talk that I mention him here. Maybe he's is. Because so I share with him that I was reading and listening podcasts and stuff, and he said, "Oh, makes sense," right? So he validated my suspicion, and he said that was important for me to get an evaluation to know more about it, right? To be sure, right? To see if there was something else, because was still the suspicion about the autistic possibility was there yet. So I think this was the positive experience. But at the same time, I was seeing a therapist, not for long, but when I found her, I said, I have a diagnosis of ADHD. I suspect that I am gifted. Do you have any experience with giftedness? Right? Because I want to know this. And she said, yes, I have.
And did she?
And let's see. I think the experience maybe she has was just the most stereotype experience that is known, right? The physics genius, like Sheldon Cooper, right? I think everybody who thinks about gifted think about him. And again, I think this is very important to say. He is a man, right? So sometimes you can be like exactly like him, the physicist genius, but if you are a woman, you're not seeing like him. Even a therapist that I saw, she said that the gifted men are perceived as brilliant, and the gifted woman is perceived as difficult to deal with. So it's the one that creates problem. And I think this makes much sense. But with this therapist, so I share my suspicion, but of course I was with my expectations maybe not aligned, because I was reading about overexcitabilities and positive disintegration, and I want to talk about it.
Of course, like we all want.
Of course, I want to talk. And I remember was a moment that I read the book Living with Intensity, where I really understood a little. Of course, I didn't read deeply about, but gave me a lot to think already, a lot to process, right? And so I was having actually a catharsis because of this book, of course. But I was okay, I was actually happy I was satisfied to having the answers, to have the understanding. But I want to talk about, right, and make sense. But then she didn't receive well this obsession about. And unfortunately, actually, she was pregnant and she needed to go to a maternity leave. So we're gonna be in a gap for a moment. So it was our last session, and then she said things that was not nice, because it was really invalidating, because she said that that maybe I was too obsessed, I was reading too much, listened too much. And this, I think just this comment is a point to comment. If you're dealing with a gifted person, how you say that they are reading too much? They're not supposed to read this much. How can you say this? So she said, but I was thinking about get a full evaluation anyway, but it's expensive. I think everywhere in the world is expensive. So I was postponing this. I was not sure to take or not. And then she said that I was reading too much, that I maybe would forge the evaluation.
You would cheat the evaluation.
Evaluation, as this would be possible. I don't know if this would be possible. And this was very, very complicated, because, of course, was very invalidating, very like lonely moment. And she said that maybe I was not gifted, probably, but I was autistic. Not that this is a problem, but I was invalidated with my suspicion about giftedness, right? So, okay, so of course I listened to her, because I think this is something that maybe gifted people do, because we are like this curious, so we search a lot, and right, and not always well received because of this behavior, like even with specialists. But sometimes I really try to respect them. So, okay, even though I don't agree with you based on what I think and I feel, what I read, I will respect your opinion, because you are the professional here. So I'm okay. I will, even though I disagree, but you're the okay. You want to be treated as the specialist. You want my respect. It's okay. I will take what you said, even though she didn't say in a good way, right? I have reasons to be hurt with the comment, but so I went to get a full evaluation. I was really anxious. I even did a lot of sessions in 1 week. For example, I scheduled two sessions per week to have the answer. It was the end of 2022,
And may I ask, the evaluation you got, you were able to get it in Brazil itself, or did you do it in English, or how did it work? Where did you find support in this regard?
Yeah, I was in Brazil. Actually, in this moment, I already have found some professionals in Brazil that talks about giftedness, and I found a psychologist, and I started listening to her to see what she was really saying, to see if she was talking the same giftedness I was. And I remember I saw her page on Instagram, and I saw that she follows Paula Prober, for example. She follows Paula Prober. She follows Conversations on Gifted Trauma. I think she knows.
She's your person, yes.
She knows. So I talked to her. Actually, I said that I was searching for a therapist and an evaluation. And then she gave me the contact of the clinic that I did. Is actually in another city, is in the south, so it's another state. So I'm from São Paulo state, but the clinic is in Paraná state. So I did online. Some psychologists say that we cannot do online, but it was a good thing for me to do online and to have an answer. But actually, it was a full neuropsychological test, and with about attention, memory too. Not just the IQ. We had the IQ part, but we had the emotional. Let's say we talk about my story, my struggles, about everything. I remember answering a lot of questionnaires. I think was like 8 sessions. The point was the thing I want to discover, right, is that if I was gifted or not, if I was really ADHD, because some people say, sometimes you're not ADHD, you're gifted, but you get misdiagnosed. And if it made any sense to be autistic too. So I had this hypothesis to her search. And what she discovered was I was gifted, yes, and ADHD, but probably not autistic in her point of view, you know. And I think something is interesting to mention in this evaluation, because I know that we try to talk about giftedness outside IQ, right? Because we have other kinds of intelligence, and we have all this emotional profile that we present. But what struck me in my evaluation, that I actually am the IQ gifted, and I feel a little, of course, I don't know what to expect, but I feel a little neglected by the education system, because it was this, maybe it was, of course I was, because I was the girl that was really good in math, I was really good in language, but I think everybody sees me like that I was a very dedicated, very responsible girl. That's why I good grades. I even received a comment from a teacher once that I was not really smart, but I was very dedicated.
So more the high achiever type. They thought you were the high achiever. And I think you mentioned something before we started our recording, that you said there are 2 terms in Portuguese that kind of describe the giftedness and more the high ability, right? And so there's also a difference, I think, in the language, and which would you like to explain a little bit more?
Yes. So in Brazil nowadays, we have 2 names for giftedness. That is high abilities in translation. And another word is like superdotação, right? I think it's the same with Spanish. You have some relation. So actually, nowadays, they accept the 2 names. And we even have, we have a law here about special education that have these terms and everything, because we have a law to actually include children with disabilities, gifted children, and autistic children, for example. Actually, all the schools, even the public schools, are kind of obliged to have the accommodations. I think this law is from 2010, but I was already in college, right? And the funny thing is that my mother is a teacher, and she did the course to receive the gifted in their school. Right, but I was already in college, and of course, we didn't have this whole profiles. The emotional profile. I don't think it was more about the interest and even the problems they create in class, for example. That because of high energy, she says a lot about this kind of students, that they have a high energy and creates problems because of this. And sometimes they are actually gifted; they are really smart. But so we have these 2 names, as I said. But for example, there is I'm not sure if she's a doctor. I think she's a researcher, that she differentiates these 2 names, that's saying that maybe high ability is not a way to describe, because high abilities is something you can develop, right? If you put effort like on this, and superdotação, right, is something much more as broader. And we have the emotional profile to the historic of the person is a whole different functioning. And she even says that we should stop talking about superdotação and start talking about o superdotado, the person, not just just the giftedness, but the gifted. We need to talk about the individual that is not, because I think it's the same here in Brazil than in other countries, is actually education that has this knowledge, and they don't have the support for the emotional part of the gift, the psychological part. For example, my mother explained that the course she did was something like this, to find what they are interested and give them the resources, the accommodation to search for these interests. So they just observe the gifted and try to help. And of course, this changes according to the school, according even to the government. Like the mayor sometimes change the investment, and they don't receive. So it's not that because we have the law that all gifted people are receiving. So I think so now, after my diagnosis, I know now some people who talks about giftedness, like some psychologists, researchers, and they really trying to bring this agenda, right? Because it's something about health. It's like even one, I think, said that is actually an emergency, is a health emergency, not just mental health emergency.
Oh, wow.
Like, because we are talking about like many children and adults, right? SU is like talk a lot about children, actually, that we need to talk about them, right? So this is now at least how it's working now in Brazil. But I think one thing is important to mention is, even though, as I said, I don't think all teacher has the training to receive, or all schools have the resource to accommodate, and even the therapists receive the training to deal with the children. Still, the adults, not much, right? Like much knowledge and conversation around this. But I think is this the story. And after the evaluation, I got finally the answer, right? So I think it was good to receive the answer, to really like, okay, now I validate. I even was talking to a friend about this, because she talks that she discovered herself as gifted, but she didn't get the evaluation because it was expensive. She was not the math gifted, so maybe she will not go well in the IQ. So we were talking about this. Sometimes it's not even maybe a good thing to get, right? But I think for me was because I have the validation for the therapist, for the doctor, for even the family to show, look, I'm different, okay? So this is the point. I know that here we have a lot of ADHDers, because actually I have two sisters, younger sisters, and then recently the younger got the diagnosis of ADHD too. And it's funny because was the hyperactive girl, she got. So we have a ADHD family, but gifted, I think the challenge of giftedness is me that maybe suffer most. So that's why I have this answer, right?
So you could relate to some of your family, but you could understand that there were some differences between you and your family. Yeah, I have a similar story, which is also, I believe, most or some of my family has ADHD, whereas for me, the giftedness comes on top. But how did this also impact your career? I think you also through
change
the whole
the multipotentiality.
Yeah.
Yes. No, actually affect a lot, because actually I chose to study engineering, right? So I have a degree electrical engineering, because I was the math, physics, the girl who likes. But I also like languages. I remember I like languages. I like to read. I even was good in writing some things. But as I said, I have a lot of difficulties in college, and I think was mostly about the ADHD, but about the giftedness too, because I was trying to find, I remember, sometimes I remember these moments in my story. I think I was very naive, because I went to engineering. Really, my thinking, my feeling about engineering is that we solve problems, right? We are the problem solvers. We create systems to make life easier, but for people, I always had this vision that we solve the problems for the world or for the people, and not for the profit, like this. So when I discovered actually it was all about the companies, and I was always so frustrated because I went to talk with my colleagues about the environmental problems, the society problems, but I was with engineers. So they always said to me, Alicia, we should not worry about this. Just do your work. But I was having this existential crisis in my choice, because I really think we need to solve the energy problem. I will solve the energy problem, climate change. So of course, I got a little frustrated. So I think I feel a little disappointed with the degree there, but I continue studying and trying to think that maybe I had a role there to represent something or bring the conversation to the table. But at the same time, I was trying to do other projects, like to develop different skills, because I want to be the engineer who has like social skills. I don't want to be the person who doesn't know to talk, for example, with people. So I tried to develop myself in this, and actually was a lot of effort actually to develop so many parts of you, right, at the same time. But of course, we want this. And I think these projects made me develop some skills that actually now is more important than in my degree, because I needed to learn how to communicate better. I even need to learn all the soft skills. I think the soft skills, the English was a part of this, because I was part of an organization that did a lot of exchange between students. So we bring students from Brazil, and we go some other countries to do voluntary work mostly. I actually went to do my exchange program in Malaysia, because I went to a really different country, a really different culture, because I think this would develop us better. So that was the moment I developed the English part, because I went to talk with people from around the world. I was really excited. It was really stimulating. I even say that sometimes I am more extrovert speaking English than Portuguese, because I think it's more stimulating for me to talk a different language, because it's like. But then, so I developed these skills, right? I think it was very important. So I went to start an internship in a company where I had the international environment that I like, and the technical part too, because it was an engineering related job, let's say. But I think I had a lot of difficulties and challenges in the corporate environment. At that time, I already knew that maybe I was not a good fit for this environment, right? But I was thinking about maybe go to be a teacher, because everybody who likes to study, I think he like the idea of being a teacher is a way, right? Or even a researcher, right? I think it would be even more stimulating. But I think here in Brazil, unfortunately, we don't have much opportunities as a researcher. Actually, researcher is not considered a job here. Sometimes it's like you receive a scholarship. It's like sometimes almost a minimal salary for you to live to study. So we don't have much investment in our research, even though we have good universities, right? So sometimes if you become a researcher, you need your parents to support you, for example. And what happens, most of us who goes, for example, some colleagues who went in this road, they found opportunities abroad. They will go to like United States, Canada, or even Europe. They found the opportunities in this, and they go, right? And so this was little one of the ideas, but it's still ideas, many ideas. But I don't know if the research would be a good fit, because I had a underdiagnosed ADHD. I needed to study, and I think I would have problems anyway. So, but I went to a corporate like internship. So, but I think it's very important when we arrive at this kind of environments to know your functioning, because maybe we could adapt more. Because I think comes both ways. Would like to have the accommodation parts from the companies, the workplace. I think we really need to talk about the accommodations in workplace. And I'm not sure how is this conversation in other countries, but what I feel is that somehow we're gonna get in a moment where we wanna find accommodation for autistic ADHDers, maybe, but I don't see for gifted. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's. I don't know. I would like to, if someone listening knows something that is going on someplace in the world about this. I don't think it's gonna happen because I don't know. Some environments don't make much sense. I think. But what I think is good when you know your function, maybe you develop the abilities to navigate. Because I think I saw a post saying that in our case, because the world is a chaos for us like this, we need to develop the abilities to navigate the world. This is our kind of our work to do. So I think in there, I had some problems, for example, with the sensory problem. Is something, the white light, that white light for me was really, it's funny. I think people that don't have sensory issues don't know what it is this.
No, they don't know. They cannot relate, right? It's so hard to explain why the noise is too loud, the smell is too
And even the
loud.
clothes, because you need to use certain kinds of clothes sometimes, right? Sometimes or maybe you're social, or even in a technical job, you need some security clothes. And I had these two sides of my experience. And I remember feeling very hot or sometimes very cold and very uncomfortable with the clothes. It's funny because just now I understand the clothes part.
The clothes part. For me, it's the shoes. Like for me, if I think about if you want to work like in a really like corporate setting where you have to have like the whole outfit, and then you have to have these nice looking shoes for women, and I'm like, no,
I cannot. I cannot either. I cannot. High heels. I don't do high heels.
I also don't do high heels
because it's the most comfortable thing ever. So I really like to use sneakers all the time, for example, or sandals in a hot weather. It's really, but I remember the sensory problem was something. Still stand still, right? In like 8 hours, sometimes you need to be back a computer 8 hours in a white light, a lot of noise. How? Okay, so I think people understood.
So people understand, and I think what you did is you became self-employed, right? You're now an entrepreneur. Do you want to quickly share a little bit with what you do, and you can do some advertisement if somebody listening would need your services? You can also share, and then we put also your link in the show notes so people can contact you if they want.
Yes. Actually, I became self-employed. So my idea was, I think the only way was to go self-employed and work from home. That time we didn't have this reality of remote work, right? So it was a dream. And because I really like to speak English, and I like to teach, I became an English teacher. I became an English teacher mostly for people who want to develop the communication part of English, since it's important in Brazil, like professionally speaking. And as I said, we don't have much people who speak English, right? So I have a kind of a mentoring program to develop English skills. I use TED Talks to discuss. So it's very stimulating. So, for example, and actually the program anyone can do, for example, even don't need to be a Portuguese speaker to do, because most of the people are actually intermediary and want to develop the communication part. So I think it's open for other people too. And maybe someone who's listening who wants to develop. I don't know. We never know. And
you never know.
I never know. Yes. And I'm trying to work with translation too, transcription. And one of the things that I'm trying to work on is maybe become a translator that has the specialty in the field of neurodivergence and giftedness. This would be my dream, actually. So if anyone hearing, like seeing my story, that how much is important the content, arrive, if this is important for your business, if it's aligned with your vision, right? I can help with that. I would love to help with that, because I think it's very, very important this content be accessible and the books be accessible. And I hope somehow to find my way in this work too. Right. So if anyone like, I want this, I will give my contact, right, to contact me.
Thank you so much for sharing. And yes, maybe somebody wants their book translated into Portuguese.
We never know.
You never know. Hopefully. And yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Something that you think people should know? Something you wish you knew earlier?
Yeah. Well, I think first, I want to say that I think the work of the content creators are really important. So the podcasters, everyone who's talking about giftedness, the first thing I want to say is very important. So continue doing that. And actually, I think it is important to have a validation about this from the professionals, from the people around you. So if you don't find in your family or friends, search people online to connect, to talk about. And I think when you understand your functioning better, life gets much easier, even like professionally, relationship-wise. I would say that my life transformed tremendously in like friendships. All the relationships changed. I think I'm a much more confident person because I know this is me. We still need to develop the abilities to navigate this world, because it's not easy for sure. But at least we knowing we can have strategies, even to find people. I think this is what most changed my life. I have these strategies, the observations to find other gifted people, for example, and this was really great for me. I think it's this.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. And yes, I can just echo what you said, like the transformation that comes after you understand yourself better, and just
Yes.
understanding yourself and understanding others and why other people react differently, and navigating. And now looking back, I guess you know why you didn't fit into the corporate world. Like all of this just gives you, as Julie Skolnick says, right, with understanding comes calm. Like this inner calm is really great. So thank you, Alícia, for sharing. And thank you for being here, for also responding to my message, and for being generous and sharing your story. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm really glad that I can share and contribute somehow to the podcast or to the gifted in general. Thank you for the invitation too.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and you learned something new. And if you did, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. And if you feel like somebody else that you know could profit from this, please send them a link to this show. And if you want to learn more, you find everything at giftedunleashed.com. And you can also subscribe to the newsletter there, so you will always be up to date for new things that are coming. And all the information that we mentioned today in the episode will be on the show notes for the episode. So everything is right there for you. And with that said, I wish you a wonderful day, and I see you next time. Bye.